So it's official. The Trey Young trade is officially happening. Trey Young has spent the last 8 years in Atlanta. He was the 5th overall pick in the 2018 NBA draft. And now it's being reported by Shams Charania of ESPN that Trey Young and his agents are working with the franchise on a trade. And Trey Young's reps at the Hawks have started collaborative talks over the last week on finding a resolution. And it was also reported today as well from Mark Stein that the Wizards have emerged as a legitimate potential trade destination for Atlanta's Trey Young in a deal construction centered around CJ McCollum's expiring contract. And we all thought we could eventually get to this point when Trey Young and the Atlanta Hawks did not agree on a contract extension this past offseason. Trey Young was extension eligible all offseason long. He does have a player option for the 2026-2027 season at $48.9 million. And the Atlanta Hawks have been one of the more disappointing teams in the NBA this season. They are 17-20 when we all expected they had a shot at becoming maybe a top 3 to 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. After adding Kristaps Porzingis, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and others this past offseason, we expected breakouts from Jalen Johnson, which are happening. Dyson Daniels has kind of been somewhat stagnant from last year, and Zachary Risache maybe hasn't taken the leap that Atlanta would have liked here in year number 2, given that he was a recent number 1 overall pick. So recently, Atlanta has been involved in Anthony Davis trade talks, and given that Trey Young and Jalen Johnson are both ball-dominant offensive players that maybe can't coexist defensively, Atlanta's going to look to go in a different direction. And this reminds me of 2 previous trades we have seen over the last 2 years. Pascal Siakam, when he got traded to the Indiana Pacers in 2024, he was a free agent at the end of the season, and he was not looking to maybe be a part of somewhat of a rebuild. And Toronto didn't want to commit a long-term number to re-signing him at that moment in the franchise's state, so they traded him to the Indiana Pacers for essentially matching salary and 3 first-round picks. One of those they ended up sending out to the Utah Jazz for Ochai Agbaji, one of them that they ended up drafting Jacoby Walter with, and another one that they ended up trading to the New Orleans Pelicans, which is the other trade that this reminds me of, the Brandon Ingram trade from the 2025 trade deadline. It felt like that New Orleans traded Brandon Ingram way too late, and they essentially got 1 first-round pick from the Toronto Raptors that ended up becoming the Indiana Pacers first-round pick, which was eventually in that Derek Queen trade, funny enough. And if you guys watched my recent video on Saturday with 15 trade ideas to shake up the NBA, I mentioned 2 Trey Young trade ideas, and one of them included the CJ McCollum matching contract with the Washington Wizards. And Mark Stein reported in that article as well that McCollum will be a piece in that deal. Since it's a $30 million expiring contract, Atlanta doesn't have to take back any bad long-term money. Essentially the Bruce Brown contract from that Brandon Ingram and Pascal Siakam trades. And I wonder what other asset would go to Atlanta. I don't think it's going to be matching salary. I would think that at least 1 first-round pick will be in that trade. I don't expect it to be a super valuable first-round pick. Like Washington isn't trading any of their first-round picks directly, given that they are still a bad rebuilding team. But I think Trey Young can elevate their floor as well. The Washington Wizards have been a rebuilding team for quite some time. They've kind of been the worst team in the NBA since they traded away Bradley Beal back in the 2023 season. They have a lot of positions in place long-term outside of that playmaking, ball-handling franchise point guard, and that could be Trey Young at a discounted value. This is where you're getting an all-star caliber point guard for basically 30 cents on the dollar. You have Alex Sarr, your franchise big man. You have Keyshawn George and Trey Johnson and Bilal Coulibaly, potentially your franchise wings. Bub Carrington looks like a really good guard off the bench. And if you can get this deal done without trading away any of those young pieces from the 2023, 2024, and 2025 drafts, I would go ahead and do this. I know Trey Young does have a limited ceiling on what he could be as your franchise player for what he is on the defensive end of the court, but he's still one of the best passers in the NBA, and this may be where his value is at an all-time low, and Washington could swoop in and get an absolute steal. At the time when Pascal Siakam and Brandon Ingram were traded, we're kind of like, wow, we thought they would go for a little bit more, but it's just where their values were at with their current team, with the contracts coming to an end. And that could be the exact same thing happening here with Trey Young, who could make Alex Sarr so much better with Trey Young's court vision and pick and roll ability. He can get great open looks for Keyshawn George and Trey Johnson, both in the half court and in transition as well. And Washington is just trying to get better. They're just trying to get in that playing tournament conversation, and Trey Young can elevate them into that tier. We know Trey Young is very familiar with the playing tournament, and the Wizards haven't really played meaningful basketball since 2021 when they got bounced in round number 1 by the 76ers. So I think this makes a ton of sense. Maybe Corey Kispert's involved in this deal, maybe Cam Whitmore, Will Riley, AJ Johnson, and B-tier first round picks. Washington Washington does have some other first round picks at their disposal that they could use in this Trae Young trade, where you're not really risking giving up a top 5 pick in the draft. Maybe it's a 2031 pick swap between the Wizards or the Hawks, something crazy down the line. And they were going to have max cap space this offseason as well with the expiring CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton contracts, so they could have given Trae Young an extension, but you can guarantee yourselves Trae Young a couple months earlier, like the Pacers did with Siakam and what the Raptors did with Brandon Ingram for 30 cents on the dollar. I think that's a no-brainer. For Atlanta, it is unfortunate that you may not get the greatest return in the world for Trae Young, given what he's done for that franchise. That conference finals run in 2021 was sensational, but that was just 5 years ago now. We are in a different Atlanta Hawks era. We have hit their ceiling as a team around Trae Young, and now you got to continue to build around Jalen Johnson, around Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and you have that Pelicans-Bucks first-round pick in this upcoming draft. Who knows? The Hawks could still be a Giannis Antetokounmpo team. They could still be an Anthony Davis team, even after trading away Trae Young. So I just think both these teams make a ton of sense. Divisions really don't feel that large in the NBA. Yeah, I don't think the Knicks would ever send their franchise star to Boston or vice versa, or the Lakers to the Clippers, but I feel like between the Wizards and the Hawks, we could definitely see Atlanta send their franchise star to Washington. There's a couple other teams that I think could be interested in Trae Young. I was always wondering if Milwaukee would try to get in there, just try to get another guy next to Giannis Antetokounmpo, given that Giannis might not be in Milwaukee much longer. Trae Young's value may be at an all-time low, so they think they're getting a steal there. I don't think Houston would be a team. Minnesota would be interesting, given that they need a point guard. I just don't think they have the resources to get it done with the financial restrictions. Dallas kind of makes sense in theory, but I don't think we're there just yet for that team to add a point guard like Trae Young. Could Toronto try to swoop in here as well, given that they could maybe get off the Quickly contract? I'm not sure that Atlanta really wants to take on that long-term Quickly value right now, and they prefer CJ McCollum's expiring contract. You can always rope in the Sacramento Kings in a trade, 100%. They're 20 games under 500. Could they go out and make a play for Trae Young, who could be their franchise star in Sacramento? Most definitely. Brooklyn has all this draft capital as well. They don't own their first round pick in 2027, so they have an incentive to try to be good next year, and Trae Young could be their franchise player in a fairly big market. But based on Mark Stein's reporting, it does feel like Trae Young could end up as a Washington Wizard very soon. It's weird that we haven't seen a single trade go down in the NBA right now. Not sure if that's because of the second apron and the CBA restrictions. Not sure if that's because teams are waiting to see what's happening with Giannis, or maybe what the Golden State Warriors are doing with Jonathan Kuminga, who becomes trade eligible in 10 days. It is very odd that we haven't seen a trade yet so far this season, and Trae Young could be the first domino to fall in a very active trade market this season. So let me know what you guys think about this Trae Young situation. It does feel like it is inevitable that Trae Young will be traded at this year's trade deadline, or most likely a couple days or weeks before it. Do you think Washington makes sense for both teams? Do you think Trae Young could make sense on a different team? Maybe it's a team I didn't mention, like a Chicago. Maybe there's a LaMelo Ball swap, who knows? But I do feel like we're going to get something very interesting very soon. I hope you guys did enjoy. Drop a thumbs up if you did, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Peace.